Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. So today I am going to be drawing and painting a little owl. Found a nice reference on Unsplash and I thought I'm going to have a go at this and we'll see how we go. So I'm going to start, is this a pencil? It's a pencil, with an outline. I wasn't sure whether I was going to do this with acrylic or watercolor. So I think I'll go with watercolor because it's an easy medium to use for me. All right. So I've got to get his proportions all right. So I start with the head. I always measure everything against the head. Always measure everything against the head. So I start with the head. And they're quite boxy, like they're quite easy to draw. Now his head is 1, 2, 2.5 times his body. 1, 2.5. So that is the length of his body. Right there. And his head's quite wide. So his head and the height of his head and the width of his head is the same. And his body is fractionally wider. So come down there like that. I mean, I could even do this guy in ink. I love doing ink. I might even draw this guy in ink. We'll see. We shall see. Come down back here. I'll draw the branch in here. Actually, no, I will do watercolor. I could do ink and watercolor. That could be fun. Okay, come down here like that. Have his claws. I'll draw the branch to the edge of the page because I'll fill the page. Now, pop. He's got beautiful toes. You can see 2 of them there. And then see off the other foot there, like that. I'll wrap that around that little stick, like that. You can see I've got to make him a little bit wider there. So you can adjust, readjust, and his tail just pops out the bottom, just down there, like that. I'll just draw a few of the feathers in, the shapes, the outside shapes. Now, I'm going to start with the feathers around the face. So he's got those ear feathers. They're not really ear feathers, but they look like ears, don't they? They're very cute. They do look like ears. Come down and around. Now he's got the eyes, his eye markings. Come down. There's more round. I almost was going to make them oval looking, but I don't want to make them oval looking. I'm going to round them off. And these ear feathers, they're not ear feathers, but they look like ear feathers, come around there. Like that. Come down. Want to get the shape of his face right. Because I always mess this up a little bit, like with the eyes of the owls. I always tend to make the eyes too big. So I come down, pop his beak like that. And his eyes, his actual eyes, are just up here. Not too big. So I take them into there like that. That's better. Try and keep them the same size. Like that. Okay. And then his pupils. And I'll leave the little corner out for the highlight. And I'll leave the highlight as the white of the paper. I just won't put paint in that little area. So I'll draw in everything where I want it first. Now he's also got like beard feathers. So I'll pop his little beard feathers on like that. I am going to do this in ink and watercolor because I love ink and I can get more detail with the feathers that way. And that could be fun. All right, come down and around here. All right, so draw the main wing feathers over here like that. Then come down and draw the individual. He's got lots of little feathers coming down there. Actually, I'm just going to do those in ink. So I'll go back in with my dip pen in just a minute. Draw his claws. Got beautiful talons, these birds. Absolutely gorgeous talons. Like that. Draw those on. All right, I am going to get my ink and my dip pen ready. Grab my little ink bowl. Oops, stick my finger in it. That was a good idea. And I'm gonna get some fresh ink from over here. And drop some nice ink into my bowl like that. That's plenty. My dip pen's over here. I cleaned that off yesterday, so I'll grab my bit of cloth because I need a bit of cloth. And I'm gonna start by just drawing the lines. And I'm not going to make them flat, straight lines. I'm just going to use little bajaggedy, wiggly lines. Like that. Just dip back into my ink every so often. These Tachikawa pens hold, or the nibs on them hold a nice amount of ink. And when I bought it, it came with a box of like 10 nibs, and I've only used 2 in 2 years. So they last forever, which is great. So now bring the feathers, come down under his brow like that. Come up here. And that comes right to his eye. Come down and around his eye. All right, let's have a look. I'm quite happy with that. Then you've got to be careful to let this dry, because if I rest my hand on it, so I work from the top to the bottom and I work my way down the page, because if I work here, there and everywhere, I'll end up with my hand in the ink and end up with smudging it everywhere. So you're better off working from top to bottom and away from yourself, away from the actual drawing area. I will go over this with watercolour at the end, just for fun's sake. They're not too symmetric. I've got to be careful because feathers, they're quite similar, but I've got to not make them look too formed the same. Keep them a little bit abstract, looking more natural, because nothing in nature is perfect. Oh, turn your volume down a fraction. There we go. That. Down and around. And I can also add this pattern onto the ear feathers. I do love ink. It's my favourite medium, I think. And these feathers are quite dark, so I'll rough up the edges with quite strong ink. like that. Darken those out quite a bit, like that. I'll work on this side. Again, darkening the very edge of the feathers. Like that. Take that down there, and then he's got this beautiful pattern on the top, and it's just lots of rough lines. You'll notice I don't have straight, flat, hard lines. I try to keep them soft and sort of broken lines. I draw with broken lines. Makes everything look a bit more natural. Pop those feathers in there like that. Okay, come down here. This bottom feather is actually nearly all dark, so I'm just going to do lines in the directions that the feathers would go, like that, keeping the edges soft. Same on this side. Same on this side. Keeping the lines soft and going the directions the feathers go. Same with fur. Whenever you're drawing, you've got to remember to go the direction that the fur would lay. Always try and follow the direction. Now I'm going to come down here because he's got like feathers that come down here. I'm going to draw his pupils in. Try and keep the shape like that. Go round. Okay, it's coming together, coming together. And again, leaving the white of the paper for the white of the eye, and I will add watercolor, like beautiful goldy coloured watercolor for the eyes, already gold. Come down and around, like that. We have one eye in. I love doing the eyes. The eyes are so fun. They really, really are the soul. Get your eyes right. That's why people start in different places on animals. I usually start with the head, the top of the head, and then get into the eyes because they're so fun. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. And anywhere that's going to be the white of the white, I'm going to leave the paper white. I'm not going to use white paint. I'm just going to use the paper to help me. So I'm just going to draw these feathers around his eyes, and they're predominantly white feathers. So I'm just going to leave the centers of them as the white of the paper, like that. Okay. And then same on this side. And drawing is so therapeutic. It's one of the most relaxing things you can do. Okay, so do some feathers on the tops of the eyes here, like that. Having a quick look. Now, he's got, around his eyes, he's got like a mask. Yeah, I'm going to go over this with watercolor, but I'm focusing mainly on ink because ink's my happy place. Okay, come down. Got to be careful. I've got to stay in proportion. All right. Come down and around, keeping the lines spajaggedy, like that. Come down and around here. So I'm going to try and do this most days of the week. Okay, so get these feathers happening. Now, I've made his head a little bit narrow. So I'm going to come down the outside again. I'm just going to widen from my original drawing, keeping the edges rough. I don't want them to be smooth. So I'm keeping little jaggedy lines coming down the outside, and I'm just widening him slightly like that. And then I'm actually going to make these the mask feathers. I call these the mask feathers. A little bit wider. Don't know what their proper name is, but they create like a mask around his eyes, which is really quite pretty. Just going to make them a fraction wider, like that. Same on this side, widen them a fraction. They actually come quite wide on this side. Okay, so I'm gonna darken up. I'm gonna create, I can do this with a brush, but I'm gonna draw it in with a pen around the eyes, around the edge, under the eyes and the edge of the beak, just the edges. And I've got to leave the highlight on the beak, again, the white of the paper. Come down and around. And it's quite dark up into these feathers up here. I'll just leave the jaggedy lines. And then I'm going to do these feathers coming down here. They're individual feathers. Feathers are so relaxing to draw. And I only started drawing birds in the last, I do lots of wildlife like deer, antelope, cattle, horses, things like that. I got into birds because I was terrified of drawing feathers. And now they're one of my favourite things to do. A few years ago, I was scared of drawing birds because there was too much detail. But now they're one of my favourite things to draw. Got to try and, again, not let them be too symmetric because they're not symmetric completely. Come down. All right. Now, he's got lots of beautiful pattern. Again, not keeping, I don't want it to be too symmetric. Just little dark feather patterns. I could almost go over this with a gold, what do you got? It's not gold. It's transparent sienna. It's a beautiful colour. Okay, down and around. He's starting to come together already, which was really good. I just don't want him to look too hard. Like I've got his edges quite hard. I've got to be a bit careful. Just use little jaggedy lines. Coming around here, and they sort of go up into his neck. And then same on this side. You can see how much ink, I've only dipped this a couple of times, how much ink this pen holds. It holds tons, which is great because you're not constantly dipping and re-dipping in your ink. Down and around. Continuing on. Like that. So yeah, I reckon I'll just do a wash of ink, a wash of watercolor over the top. Might not even worry about a background, but we'll see how the mop flops. Okay, then this music's really good. I've got classical on Epidemic, which is a music provider, royalty free, which is really good. And it's really nice, actually, really lovely music. And now keep these feathers ruffled, a little bit ruffled at the back. I'm going to work on them. So they're the ones that go down the top of the back of the wing. Get my dip out of the way. And then come down. A bit smoother down there, but I'm still going to use broken lines. Like just to sort of show the edges of the feathers. Then, actually, if I, you know what, it's going to be easier if I work one feather at a time, because that way they won't look too uniform, like that. And then I'll just, actually I'm going to do the details on them with a brush. I'm not going to use the pen for the detail on that. I'm just going to come up here like that and then bring these lines down for the individual feathers, and I'll do washes for those. Watercolor washes and ink washes. And come down here like that. I'm already thinking ahead to what colours I'm going to be using on these and how I'm going to do it. Got to be, that's a bit more rough feather under there. And then there's a bigger feather here. One coming down here, and then little ones here, because his feathers are all folded up, and he's got these big fluffy ones on the top, and the little ones come down underneath. And then he's got his tummy feathers. There's a couple that come around here like that, and then flight feathers that come down like that. See, I should have worked on the other side first, because now I'm going to have to go onto that side and be careful where I rest my hand. So come down here. Come down. All the way down. Actually, I've got to extend these feathers down, so I can adjust. So you can see you can adjust the drawing as you go. You don't have to stick exactly to your lines. I like to adjust as I go. Now I'm going to draw this branch in like that. Come down between his feet. Now he's got hairy toes, feathery toes. So I'm just going to draw these feathery toes in. Just keeping the rough lines like that. Then I can draw the talon like that. And I'll fill that in with dark like that. Like that. And I can only see 2 toes on each feet. And I'm working for a photo I found on Unsplash. There's some gorgeous reference pictures on Unsplash and Pixabay and things like that you can use if you haven't got your own stock of photos. Okay. Now I'm going to come down on this side. I've got to keep my hand off the paper so I don't smudge the ink that I've put down there already. So I'm sort of holding the back of the pen. These dip pens are beautifully balanced, so they're really easy to hold at the back. Okay, come down here. And then down to the inside, because his body comes back into here. And then there's feathers there. So I've just got to be careful and go. Start with the outside feather, keeping the edges soft, and then inside wing feathers coming down here. Again, keeping the lines soft, not hard, straight, flat lines. Right, there we go. Come down here to his tail feathers. They sort of cross over. He's got a little bit of fluffy bits there, like that. And this feather comes down underneath. And then under here. All right. I can darken these off because they are in shadow. So I'm just going to do light lines, very light lines, like that. So you can still see the light through the picture, through the sketch. Again, come down and around, following the directions of the lines on the feathers, like that. Down and around. Okay, now I can continue on with this stick that he's sitting on. I got a bit ahead of myself there. I started doing the stick and then I got onto tail feathers and feet and God knows what else. I do that. I get the wanders on art. I get the wanders around the picture. And I jump from top to bottom and all over the place. There's no real pattern to what I do or how I do it. Now for this wood, I'm going to pop in some grain just for a second, because why not? Because I can see some beautiful texture on this wood, and then I'll just do a watercolor wash over the top. I can see a bit of grain over here. Whoops, the side of my dip pen. So just little knots in the wood, little bits of eyes. I call them eyes. They look like little eyes in the wood. I'll just add just the lines flowing, the grain of the wood of the bark, just to help give it some direction, make it look like it's got a flow to it, the direction of the bark. And I'll add shadows and stuff after. I've got to make that talon a fraction bigger, like that. There we go. As you see little things that need correcting, you can correct them. Coming down here now, the bottom of that stick or the perch branch is in shadow, but I'll do that with watercolor at the end when it's all dry. Okay, having a look. And yeah, another trick when you do an ink is get water fast, so it doesn't smudge when you add watercolor over the top. Now I'm going to work on the chest feathers, and I'm just going to mark in. I'm not going to draw each individual feather. I'm just going to mark in the patterns around the edges that are the darkest. And he's the most beautiful golden brown colour, this bird. It's gorgeous, absolutely beautiful colour. I've got my dog at my feet, curled up on the floor. So comfy on his cushion. All right. Again, also always following the direction of the feathers. They sort of come down into a point at the middle, like that. So keep that coming down like that. Okie doke. Come down and around. Okay, come down and around here. Okay, I can work. Just having a quick look at up on the big screen, because that gives me perspective as well. Then coming down here. He really does have a lot of pattern. Just going to pop down here for a second because he's got whiter feathers over his feet that I'm just going to draw in the rough sort of swirling motion of these loose soft feathers around there, like that. And then his pattern feathers come up and around here. So I've got to add some more wing feathers just so that they're coming down behind the stick, because I see little bits that need adjusting. All right, come down and around. I can see that I've got to thicken up just down there. All right, come down here. I'm not drawing the individual feathers, I'm just literally drawing the texture around the edges of them. So come down and around. Okay. Come back and around. Got to be careful here because go back and down and around. These feathers sort of overlap in the middle, so I'll draw those rough edges like that. Then come down here, following the direction that they go, and then under here they're all light feathers, so I'm going to leave those. All right, I'm happy with that. That's looking pretty good, I think. Looking pretty good. I'm quite happy with that as a sketch. All right, coming down and around there. So I'm just darkening things up a little bit. You see I've got to darken up. Start to see little bits that I've missed, but the drawing's just about to where I can add the watercolor. So I'm just leveling out proportions a little bit. I'm going to clean my dip pen, and now I'm going to get my watercolor out. Get my watercolors ready, get my palette up here, and we're going to start on the colour. Okay, so I'm going to start with transparent sienna. It is my go-to favourite, most beautiful colour that you can see the left there, on the right there. Okay, and I'm going to dilute that right down, very thin, because I want it pale. And I'm going to start by adding that around his eye. Anywhere that's white, I'm leaving the white of the paper. And I'm using flat, it's called hot press watercolor paper. It's smooth, because I like to work with, when I'm doing animal art, I like to have smooth paper. This makes life a lot easier for me. Good. Okay, so come down and around here. This is a beautiful colour, but I've got it very, very diluted. I'll build up the layers from light to dark. Now, he's actually got this gold all over in his goldy reddy brown. It's just one little rim around his eyes that is light, so I'll leave that. I come down the outside of his eyes onto his neck there. These feathers around the underneath of his neck are light, so I'll go around those like that. I can pick up that little bit of excess paint, and I can actually I can wash over the lot of these because the lighter feathers are down on his tummy. So anywhere like these, they can all be brown-ish. Like that. And then come down. Get some more transparent sienna on my brush, on my palette. Get a bit more, dip it into my water. A bit more on my palette. There we go. All of these feathers, just wash over the top. Wash over the top, like that. Coming down to the wood. Now I've got to be careful here. I've got to come down over the top of these ones, then leave the white feathers on the underside of his belly there, like that. Okay. Get a bit more transparent sienna. Come down underneath his bottom of his tail. And now that's going to be, I'll let that dry a little bit. I'll leave a little bit of white under there. Then I'll go to work on the branch for a little bit. So I'll just fill in his toes are light. Like they're a light colour. I won't add too many layers of this onto the toes. All right, so I'm going to leave that now, like that. So this is how I use the same colour, but I'm just adding less water to the pigment, so it's a stronger tone. That's how you get your highlights and darks and things, like that. And these are just cheap brushes too. These are like dollar shop brushes. They're not expensive. Because I was buying lots of expensive brushes and wrecking them, so I decided not to do that anymore. Again on this eye, so the outside's a bit darker. This one's a different kind of shadow. To the inside of that one a bit more. Use the very, very tip to create that pattern, like that. All right, so they're not exactly symmetric. All right, leaving the white of those ones and then coming down and adding. I've got to add a bit of darker colour up here. Now his ears is a stronger coloured, so I'll darken those up. So it's just the same pigment, it's exactly the same colour, just less water. You can see the difference that has made. Okay, having a quick look at my screen. And I'm going to grab that less water, more pigment. Transparent sienna. And I'm going to blob that, maybe a fraction more water to get it to flow better, onto his wings. Strengthen those up, make them a little bit darker because they're a bit darker than the rest of his body. And I'll go a bit of burnt umber over the top of that again, to add in the stronger browns. And you could even use some blues instead of browns, like an indigo. Love indigo, really useful colour. Okay, a bit more pigment. Come down this side. Darken it up a bit more, like that. Down underneath. Like that. I'll darken that quite a bit actually. Like that. Okay, quite happy with that. Now, get a bit more pigment and I'm going to go round the edges of these feathers where I've got the ink. I'm just going to darken up like that around those. Just like that. Down and around. Like that. I can add some deep blues. Actually, I'm going to use indigo. I'm not going to use a dark brown. I'm going to use indigo in the darkest darks. So more pigment, less water for these darker bits here. I'm just going to literally go straight into the pigment and just follow that line down there. All right. Gonna let that body dry a fraction. And I'm going to go back into his eyes, and I'm going to go in with, let's have a look, the orange. I'm going to go in with the light orange. Got a light orange paint here. It's a yellowy orange. And I'm going to go round the eye. Whoops. Should be a bit careful. That went a bit everywhere. And take that round the other eye as well. If you lose the highlight, you can always just add a bit of acrylic paint or pen or whatever. Just gotta pick that off the ink there. So that's his eye. Just the basics. While that's still wet, I'm going to get a darker orange, a stronger orange on my palette to add to the top, because the top's in shadow, so but it doesn't look darker, it just looks like a stronger orange. So I'll take that and add that around the top of both his eyes, just to make them two-tone. Keeps them a bit more interesting. All right, now I'm going to get a finer brush, just another cheapie, and I'm going to grab my indigo. Get a bit of indigo. Get that on my palette. It's a beautiful dark, like it's just a beautiful blue. It is a beautiful blue, and I'm going to use that tip of my brush. So this is just a very dark blue, because you very rarely use black paint. I try not to use black paint if I can. And then I come down, because I mean the ink's enough dark in it anyway. So anywhere that's the darkest, I'm going to add over the top with that. And you'll start to come to life a bit. You'll start to see, the picture will start to pop a little bit. So take that down the line of these wing feathers. And you'll still see the inking through them. Like that. Right, coming down and around. Okay. Right, now he's got very dark shadows that I'm going to use this same blue under his nape of his neck, where he's got the dark feathers. It's all shadowed under here. So anywhere that's shadow is that blue. Like that. I can actually come around and make the ring around his eyes a fraction wider, but with the blue. Not too much ink. See how I'm just widening, darkening that, and I'll go over the top of the ink around his mask. I always use blue for shadows, blues and purples, always. Because it's a natural, and I'll use it on the darkest dark on his beak as well. I'll just leave the white of the paper for the highlight. Like that. Yep, I use indigo a lot for shadows. Indigo is my favourite blue. So I highly recommend, if you get watercolours, I recommend Schminky. If you can get them where you are, Schminky watercolours, and get their indigo. Their indigo is my favourite indigo. It is a beautiful colour. Now, he's also darker I've missed the dark spot up here. And you can mix blue with burnt umber, any blue with burnt umber, and it'll make an almost black, but a natural looking black. Now I'm going to go to work on the log. So the log is just, this is the fun part of watercolor. I'm going to wet. Okay, dip my paintbrush in there, wet it, still got a little touch of blue in it, won't matter. Run it around the whole of the perch, the log. And I've just got into acrylic painting again. I haven't done that in a long time, and that's great fun. Okay, so you just wet the paper, drop the watercolor in, and it'll flow and do what watercolor does best. All right, coming down, filling all that in. Just popping the shadows on the perch now. Like that. And it just looks softer. To me, it just looks softer. So now I'm going to get my burnt umber. Got that over here. Where is it? Burnt umber. And I'm going to add a little bit of indigo to it. So burnt umber and indigo makes a dark grey, almost black brown. And I'm just going to use that to pop in this feather detail on these wing feathers. See how wet that is? See, this is wet on dry, because that's all dry now. But I do tend to use a lot of wet on wet. Okay, come down and around. Okay, so you can just be rough. You don't have to do exact. So your burnt umber and any blue will make a dark brown grey. But that's one thing I like about the Senneliers and the Schminky paints too. The cheaper paints, cheaper watercolours, they don't mix the same. They'll use 3 or 4 pigments. Sorry, not 7 or 8. 3 or 4 pigments to make a colour. Like traditionally, if you mix it, I'd like to mix my own. So if you go with a Schminky or a Sennelier, they've only got 1 or 2 pigments in each of their colours. So you can mix them together to make another colour and it won't go all muddy. Because I've got one set that's got about 60 odd colours in it, 60 or 70 colours, but you can't mix them together because they're already pre-made, they turn to mud. If you put them with another colour, they mix up wrong. They just, they turn to mud. So you've got to just use them as they are made. So that's another thing, another reason I use Schminkies and Senneliers is because they're better mixable. You can make nice, clean colours with them. Okay, having a quick look. So he's coming to life now. He's starting to come together. I've probably got him a little bit dark around the eyes. I'm going to add a bit of orange, a bit more orange than the dark orange. A bit of the stronger orange, not darker actually, just stronger orange around the top of this eye and that eye, like that. Because they're in shadow at the top, like that. And then I'm going to take a bit of yellowy orange around the edges of his eyes as well. I'm going to add that into the gold around there, just to lighten that up a little. Now you can see I've got a smudge up here. I've messed it up a little bit, so I'm going to get a clean brush. And I'm just going to scrub over the top of that watercolour there that's gone where I didn't want it. And see, I lifted it off. Mistake is gone. So that shows you, and a good quality watercolour and good quality paper is I recommend. Okay, so that's good. I'm happy with that. While that's just sitting there, I'm going to wet. I wasn't going to do a background, but I'm going to do a background. So to do the background, I'm literally just going to wet all around the bird. Smudged it. That's all right. You can quickly touch that with a bit of cloth. Wet all around that side of the bird. I don't usually use a flat brush. I'm not going to use a flat brush. I don't like a flat brush. I'm going to go back to my, there we go. I'll use a mop. There. It's called a mop. And I'm going to do the background, a dark green. I'm going to go olive. Where's my olive green? There's an olive green. And yeah, you get a cobalt blue and cadmium yellow will make a nice green. So then while that's still wet, I'm going to drop this green in. You can see this is a granulating sort of a green. Get some olive. Get some more on my palette. Whoops. A bit too thick, but that's okay. And then anywhere I've added the water, that paint will flow like that. Like that. I've got to be careful not to get it onto the log. So I've just picked it up with a bit of cloth. And did I wet up it? I've got to wet the rest of the paper now, so I'll work down the bottom here. Doesn't matter that it's got a bit of green pigment in it, and I'm just going to wet the paper. Like that, come down and around. And they call that, like what I did before, it's called lifting. I lifted the bit of paint off. So you can go back in and pick it up with your brush and okay, come down and around. I'm going to kind of come up to here, see how the water's all pooling at the edge of the stick. So I'll just pick that up with the tip of my brush at the bottom. Try not to go back into your original paintwork because it'll leave weird streaks. Just trying to pick up the edge of this so it doesn't go all weird. There we go. Now, work on the other side a bit. I'm going to end up with a hard line there because I let that dry too quick. So again, running around with the wet. It's not clean water, but it doesn't matter because I'm using the same colour on it anyway. So it doesn't make any difference. And then drop in the olive while it's still wet. That's the only thing about this smooth paper, as it doesn't carry the water. When it's grainy paper, for some reason, the water flows better. It sort of gives it, guides it, I think. This paper absorbs it. Okay. Now I'm going to come here and just creating patterns in the background just to make it look a bit more interesting. Just going straight, just with olive green. Okay, now the bottom's even dry, so I've got to re-wet a little bit. And we're just about done. He's not far from being done. Just going to keep this colour interesting around the bottom. You can see the white of the paper is the white of the bird. I haven't used a white paint or a white pen or anything, but you can. There's no shame in using white. Like if I mess up and I need to add white back, I'll use white acrylic paint or a white pen, white marker. Like what are they called? Can't remember what they're called now. Posca pen, because they're basically acrylic paint anyway. Acrylic paint pen, and they're good. So I'm just literally creating pattern around, just so it's not all universally one thing like that. And I reckon I am just about done. So thank you so much for watching. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you all for the next video. Okie doke. Bye.